Imagine calling your child's name 3 times while they sit with a glowing screen, eyes fixed, fingers tapping, not even flinching as your voice rises. Maybe you've promised 5 more minutes, but those 5 minutes turn into half an hour, then a full hour, and suddenly bedtime has come and gone, homework is forgotten, and you feel like you're fighting a machine for your child's attention. If that feels familiar, you're not alone. Parents everywhere wrestle with the same questions: how much screen time is too much? How do you set boundaries without constant battles? And perhaps hardest of all, how do you model good habits when you find yourself scrolling late into the night? That's the world Anya Kamenetz speaks to in The Art of Screen Time, how your family can balance digital media and real life. This book doesn't scold or shame. Instead, it acknowledges what parents already know deep down: screens aren't going anywhere. They're in our homes, our schools, even our pockets. Fighting to banish them completely only leaves us frustrated. The real art lies in learning how to live with them, use them wisely, and create balance in family life. In this audiobook-style reflection, I'll take you through the book's core ideas, chapter by chapter, and by the end, you'll walk away with practical ways to manage screens that feel realistic, not rigid. Together, we'll explore what healthy versus unhealthy use looks like, how to stop device battles before they begin, and how to become the kind of role model your children need in a digital age. The journey begins in the real world, the messy and complicated place where parenting actually happens. In the first chapter, Kamenetz gently reminds us that digital parenting isn't about perfection. It's not about following an impossible set of rules where children happily put down devices the moment you ask. Instead, it's about recognizing that screen use, like food, is woven into daily life. Think of it like a diet. Some screen time is nutritious, like a family movie night where everyone laughs together or a child using an educational app to learn a new language. Other screen time is like junk food, endless scrolling, mindless videos, games that go on for hours. A little won't hurt, but too much and it begins to displace what's truly healthy: sleep, outdoor play, and face-to-face for parents, because it shifts the question away from guilt. Instead of asking, "Am I ruining my child with screens?" the better question becomes, what role are screens playing in my child's day? What are they replacing? A parent who hands their child a tablet for 15 minutes so they can finish dinner is not doing harm. But if that tablet replaces bedtime stories, outdoor play, and conversation, then it may be time to rethink the balance. Parents often ask, but really, how much is too much? And the honest answer, according to research, is that it depends. Each child is different. Some can spend longer stretches online without much impact, while others are more sensitive. The real key is to watch your child's behavior. Do they become irritable or aggressive when it's time to put the device down? Do they struggle to sleep, or lose interest in activities they once loved? These are red flags. In that sense, screen time management is less about the clock and more about the consequences. As Kamenetz points out, the most successful parents treat screen time the same way they treat other aspects of parenting, with structure, compassion, and flexibility. If mealtimes are screen-free, that rule holds whether it's Monday or Saturday. If bedtime means devices go in the kitchen, then that's non-negotiable. These rhythms create predictability, and children thrive on knowing what to expect. It's inconsistency, unlimited YouTube one day, sudden bans the next, that fuels conflict. Predictable rules, gently enforced, are far more effective than daily battles. But perhaps the most humbling insight from this chapter is the reminder that our kids are watching us. A toddler may not understand the words, digital balance, but they see whether we put our phones away at dinner. A teenager may argue about curfews, but they notice when we spend evenings scrolling instead of talking. This is what Kamenetz calls the hidden layer of digital parenting. It's not just about their screens, it's about ours too. The way we handle our devices sets the tone. If we check emails during every conversation, our children will absorb the message that screens matter more than people. But if we put devices aside to listen, they'll learn that presence matters. One mother in the book shared how she created a simple ritual. Every night, she and her kids placed their devices in a basket before dinner. At first, it was met with groans, but over time it became a cherished habit. Meals grew longer. Conversations became richer. The kids began to ask questions, tell stories, and even laugh together without distraction. What began as a rule turned into a rhythm, and that rhythm became part of their second chapter. Kamenetz turns our attention to the science behind screen use. And here's where things get interesting, because the science is both reassuring and a little unsettling. Parents often want simple answers: is screen time bad? Yes or no? But the truth is more complicated. Research tells us that screens can have both benefits and risks, and the way they affect children depends on how they're used, when they're used, and what they replace. Think about sleep, one of the most important building blocks of a child's growth. Studies show that children who use screens late into the evening often struggle to fall asleep. The bright blue light from devices tells the brain it's still daytime, delaying melatonin, the hormone that makes us drowsy. So a child who might have drifted off by 9 o'clock is still wide awake at 10, staring at the ceiling. The next day they're cranky, distracted, and more prone to meltdowns. It's not the device itself that's the problem, but the way it intrudes on rest. Attention is another area researchers worry about. In one study, kids who spent excessive hours with fast-moving, highly stimulating shows and games found it harder to focus on slower-paced classroom tasks. Imagine a child accustomed to the rapid-fire excitement of video games suddenly being asked to sit quietly with a book. Their brain, rewired to crave constant stimulation, struggles with patience. Does this mean all video games are harmful? Not at all. Many games encourage problem-solving and creativity. But it does mean parents should be mindful of balance, ensuring children experience both high-stimulation media and slower, more reflective activities. And then there's behavior. Parents sometimes notice that after long stretches of screen time, kids become irritable, quick to anger, or unusually withdrawn. Scientists suggest that this is partly because of the dopamine rush that screens provide. Every ping, like, or new level conquered gives a little hit of pleasure. But when the device is taken away, the brain craves more. This doesn't mean children are addicted in the same way as with substances, but the craving is real, and so are the tantrums that follow. Now, here's where Kamenetz is careful: she doesn't want parents to spiral into fear. The research is sobering, yes, but it's not meant to make us panic. Instead, it's a reminder that while screens are powerful, they don't have to be harmful if managed with care. A child who stays up late once in a while to watch a family movie is not doomed to lifelong insomnia. A teenager who spends an afternoon gaming isn't automatically losing their ability to focus. The real danger comes when unhealthy screen habits become the default, replacing essentials like sleep, outdoor play, and real human connection. His 8-year-old became moody and argumentative after long gaming sessions. Instead of banning the games outright, he decided to experiment. For a week, he asked his son to stop gaming an hour before bedtime, replacing that time with reading or drawing. The difference was dramatic. Bedtime was calmer, and mornings were easier. The game itself wasn't the enemy, the timing was. This is one of the most practical insights of the science, the when matters as much as the how much. Screen time right before bed is far more disruptive than screen time earlier in the day. Passive consumption of endless videos has different effects than interactive play or creative projects. So when parents ask, what's healthy versus unhealthy use, the answer is not about numbers alone, but about patterns. Healthy use supports a child's life. Unhealthy use disrupts it. And here's the hopeful side of the science: screens can also be powerful tools for learning and connection. A preschooler FaceTiming with a grandparent is not just staring at a screen, they're strengthening bonds across distance. A teenager researching online for a school project is not zoning out, they're building skills for the future. Even entertainment, when shared as a family, can bring laughter and closeness. The key, as always, is balance. By the end of this chapter, one thing becomes clear: parents don't need to fear screens, but they do need to pay attention. Notice the signs of imbalance. Watch how your child behaves after using devices. Protect the essentials: sleep, play, conversation. If those foundations are strong, then screens can be enjoyed without guilt. The science gives us both a warning and a reassurance: screens are powerful, but they're not destiny. With mindful choices, parents can guide their children toward healthy use that fits into life rather than taking it over. By the time we reach the third chapter, Kamenetz begins to unravel something every parent has probably sensed but rarely hears from experts: there isn't one single rule that fits every family, or every child. The advice about screen time is often served up like a universal law: no more than 2 hours, never before age 2, screens are harmful. But the truth revealed in the emerging evidence is far more nuanced. Children are not identical, families are not identical, and so the impact of screens can't be identical either. Picture two children. One spends an hour each evening playing a video game with his dad. They laugh, strategize, and share inside jokes. Afterwards, he does his homework, eats dinner, and goes to bed without fuss. Another child spends that same hour alone on the tablet, binging random videos until it's time to sleep. Afterwards, she's irritable, resists bedtime, and seems tired the next day. Both had an hour of screen time, but the outcomes couldn't be more different. The difference isn't the clock, it's the context has shifted the conversation. Instead of rigid limits, experts are encouraging parents to look at the whole child. Is your child thriving? Do they sleep well, stay active, maintain friendships, and engage with the family? If so, their screen use is probably balanced. But if you see withdrawal, constant battles, slipping grades, or unhealthy sleep patterns, it may be time to step in. The number of hours matters less than the quality of life surrounding those hours. Kamenetz emphasizes that parents need to become observers, almost like detectives of their own families. Watch the patterns. Does your child become more aggressive after certain apps? Do they light up with joy when playing creative games, but spiral after endless scrolling? These observations are as important as any research study, because every child reacts differently. Take, for example, siblings in the same home. One might handle 2 hours of gaming without much fuss, while the other melts down after 30 minutes. It doesn't mean one is better than the other, it simply means their brains and personalities respond differently. The art of parenting here is not applying one blanket rule, but tailoring boundaries to the child in front of you. Parents often ask, so how do I know if it's unhealthy? The evidence gives us some signs. When screen use consistently displaces core needs, sleep, face-to-face interaction, schoolwork, and physical activity, that's a warning. When a child becomes unable to self-regulate, when devices feel more important than people, that's another. But when screens are integrated into a balanced life, the evidence shows they are not automatically harmful. And here's another insight from the new research: guilt doesn't help. Parents often feel guilty for handing over a device to buy a moment of peace, especially when articles scream about screen addiction. But guilt rarely leads to better parenting decisions. What helps instead is intentionality. If you hand your toddler a tablet so you can stir the soup, that's not failure, that's survival. The harm comes when screens become the default babysitter, replacing playtime, conversation, or bedtime rituals. One mother told Kamenetz that she stopped counting exact minutes and started watching for patterns. She noticed her son handled TV well after school but struggled with video games before bed. So she made a simple shift: games in the afternoon, shows in the evening. The result was fewer tantrums and calmer nights. No stopwatch needed, just observation and adjustment. This chapter feels like a breath of fresh air for parents because it releases us from the illusion of perfection. Instead of memorizing one-size-fits-all rules, we're invited to pay attention, to trust our instincts, and to shape boundaries that reflect our child's unique needs. Tells us that the story of screens is still being written. Technology changes quickly, and studies are always catching up. But one truth stands firm: children thrive when they have balance, enough sleep, enough movement, enough love, and yes, some space for screens too. When those foundations are strong, the screens lose their power to dominate. So rather than asking only, how much is too much, parents might begin to ask, what does balance look like for my child, right now, in this season of life? The answer may shift as they grow, and that's okay. Parenting is not about fixed formulas, but about adapting with wisdom and care. By the time we step into the 4th chapter, the mood of the book shifts. After laying out the science and the caution, Anya Kamenetz offers something that feels both hopeful and empowering. Parents, she says, aren't powerless in the face of technology. We are not victims of our children's devices, nor are we doomed to lose the battle to endless screens. In fact, we hold more influence than we realize. This chapter is a reminder that screens can be more than a source of tension, they can also become a tool for connection. Think about the difference between a child watching YouTube alone in their room versus a family sitting together, laughing at the same silly cat video. The screen is the same, but the experience is completely different. One isolates, the other bonds. One feels like escape, the other like togetherness. This is the first step of positive parenting with media, using screens with your children rather than only handing screens to them. Kamenetz encourages parents to co-view, to join in rather than hover in judgment. When you sit down to watch a show with your child, you get to see what makes them laugh, what confuses them, what excites them. You can ask questions like, what do you think about that character? Or, does this remind you of anything in real life? Suddenly, screen time isn't passive consumption anymore. It becomes a springboard for conversation and learning. One dad shared how he started playing a popular video game with his teenage son. At first, he thought it would be a waste of time. But over weeks of playing, he found his son opening up in ways he hadn't before. They'd be in the middle of a game mission when his son would suddenly talk about a problem at school or confess a worry he hadn't shared at the dinner table. The screen became a bridge, not a wall. That's the heart of what Kamenetz means. With intention, screens can strengthen the parent-child bond. Instead of parenting with media is setting boundaries that feel clear but not harsh. Instead of constant no's, parents can establish rhythms and family values that shape how screens are used. A family might decide that phones stay out of bedrooms, not because they are bad, but because sleep is sacred. Or that Sunday afternoons are for outdoor adventures, which means devices stay home. These rules don't have to be battles. They can be framed positively. We keep bedrooms phone-free so we can sleep better. We have device-free dinners so we can connect with each other. Framing boundaries around values helps children understand the why, not just the what. And here's something powerful: when parents communicate openly about media, kids are more likely to listen. Instead of simply demanding, "Turn it off now," you might say, "I notice you get frustrated when I ask you to stop. I don't want us to fight. Can we agree on a stopping point before you start?" This kind of collaborative approach gives children some ownership and reduces resistance. Of course, Kamenetz knows no parent is perfect. There will still be times when you hand over the tablet just to keep the peace, or when your child begs for one more episode. But when screens are woven into a larger fabric of family connection and communication, those moments don't have to spiral into guilt. What matters is the overall culture you build. And here's where the chapter offers another gentle reminder: children learn digital habits by watching us. Positive parenting with media means modeling curiosity, moderation, and presence. If we use screens to learn, connect, and create, our kids will see that. If we use screens to avoid each other, they'll see that too. The key insight of this chapter is simple but profound: you have more power than you think. By engaging with your children's media, by setting values-driven boundaries, and by modeling the habits you hope to see, you transform screens from a source of conflict into a shared part of family life. It doesn't require perfection, just presence. By the time we arrive at this chapter, Kamenetz shifts from research and big-picture ideas to the everyday realities of parenting. This is where it all gets practical, because theory is one thing, but what actually happens in kitchens and living rooms is another. Parents often say, "I get the advice, but how do I actually make it work without constant fights?" Chapter 5 answers that by showing how real families weave screen rules into daily life. Here is that balance isn't usually achieved through grand declarations or strict bans. It's found in small, manageable chunks, an hour here, an hour there. Instead of obsessing over total screen time in a week, many families do better focusing on how each moment is structured. Think of it as an hour at a time approach. For example, a family might allow screen use after homework is done and before dinner. That hour feels contained, predictable, and easy to enforce. Compare that to letting devices run all day and then suddenly demanding they shut off, which almost always ends in conflict. Parents in the book shared clever ways they built these rhythms. One family used timers. Before starting a show or game, they'd agree on how long it would last, and the timer ended the session instead of the parent. That simple trick turned the device itself into the bad guy, taking pressure off mom and dad. Another family used natural transitions. A show could be watched before dinner, but when the food was ready, the show stopped. By linking screen time to everyday routines, boundaries felt less arbitrary. Another powerful tool was creating screen-free zones. For some families, bedrooms were sacred, no devices allowed, protecting sleep and private time. For others, the dining table was reserved for meals and conversation. A few even made cars screen-free, using drive time for music, storytelling, or simple quiet togetherness. What these examples show is that boundaries work best when they're connected to values. Families weren't just banning screens, they were protecting what mattered most: sleep, conversation, and connection. Of course, these routines aren't perfect. Kamenetz is honest about that. Parents still face whining, pushback, and the occasional meltdown. But she reminds us that consistency makes all the difference. A child may resist at first, but when rules are predictable, they eventually accept them as part of family culture. Think of brushing teeth. No child loves it at the beginning, but over time, it becomes a non-negotiable habit. Screen boundaries can work the same way. One particularly relatable story came from a mom of 3 who found herself constantly negotiating with her kids over devices. Every day was a battle, just 5 more minutes, please. Then she decided to change tactics. Instead of negotiating daily, she created a family media plan. Together, they wrote down the rules: when devices could be used, where they couldn't go, and how long was reasonable. The kids had a say in the plan, and because they helped create it, they were more willing to follow it. Suddenly, instead of mom versus kids, it became the whole family working with agreed-upon guidelines. On something many parents wonder: how do I stop fights over devices? The truth is, you probably won't stop every single fight. But you can reduce them by moving away from moment-to-moment negotiations and toward established patterns. Clear rules, consistent rhythms, and natural transitions make screen use less of a power struggle. The hour-at-a-time approach also acknowledges that life is messy. There will be long car rides when a tablet saves everyone's sanity. There will be sick days when cartoons run for hours. That's okay. What matters is the bigger pattern, that most days, most of the time, screens are just one part of a rich, varied life. By the end of this chapter, one thing becomes clear: families don't need perfect systems. They need rhythms that fit their lives, values that guide their choices, and the courage to stick with them long enough to become habits. Screens don't have to dominate the household, and they don't have to be a daily fight. With simple strategies, timers, natural breaks, screen-free zones, and family plans, parents can find peace and predictability in an area that often feels chaotic. When we enter the 6th chapter, the focus shifts from home life to the classroom, where screens are no longer optional. For many parents, this raises big questions: are devices in school truly helping my child learn? Or are they just another distraction? The conversation about technology in education is one of the most hotly debated topics today, and Kamenetz approaches it with both honesty and balance. In schools everywhere, children are issued tablets or laptops as early as kindergarten. Teachers use smartboards, online quizzes, and apps for reading or math practice. Parents often wonder if this digital shift is preparing kids for the future, or robbing them of the basics. And here's the truth, the evidence is mixed. Technology can open doors, but it can also create gaps if used carelessly. Imagine a classroom where each student has a tablet. On the good days, the devices allow kids to research topics instantly, collaborate on projects, and explore concepts with interactive tools. A shy child might finally raise their hand through a digital poll. A struggling reader might benefit from adaptive software that adjusts to their pace. In these cases, technology empowers learning. But on the flip side, the same tablets can be gateways to distraction. Teachers sometimes find students toggling between assignments and games, or zoning out altogether. And too much reliance on screens can mean less time for handwriting, face-to-face discussion, or hands-on activities, the very skills children also need to thrive. Is screen time at school different from screen time at home? The answer is yes, but with an important caveat. School-based screen time is meant to be purposeful, structured, and tied to learning goals. It's not about endless scrolling or random videos. When managed well, screens in school can complement traditional learning rather than replace it. The danger comes when screens become the default, or when schools adopt flashy tools without clear evidence of their benefits. Kamenetz points out another concern, equity. Some schools have state-of-the-art devices and fast internet, while others struggle with outdated equipment. Technology in education has the potential to widen gaps if not implemented carefully. A child in a wealthy district may learn coding and digital literacy, while another in a low-resource school might just use their tech time for drill and practice apps. Parents need to be aware of these differences, and sometimes advocate to make sure their child's school is using technology in meaningful, creative ways. At home, parents can support by asking questions: how are devices being used in your classroom? Are they helping you learn, or are they just filling time? These conversations help children reflect on their own learning, teaching them to recognize when technology is helpful versus when it's a distraction. And here's an important insight: even in the age of tablets and smartboards, kids still need plenty of low-tech learning. Reading physical books, writing by hand, engaging in art, music, or outdoor play, these experiences nurture the brain in ways screens cannot. The best classrooms find balance, blending digital tools with human connection, creativity, and exploration. One teacher shared that she uses laptops for research and certain projects, but insists her students read print books daily. Why? Because the act of flipping pages, holding a book, and focusing without hyperlinks builds a kind of deep attention that screens often chip away. Her approach highlights a central theme of this chapter: technology should be a supplement, not a substitute. For parents, this means we don't need to panic when schools use screens. Instead, we can ask thoughtful questions, support balance at home, and remember that the fundamentals of learning, curiosity, conversation, creativity, will always matter more than the latest app. By the end of this chapter, the message is clear: screens in schools are not going away. But with mindful use, they don't have to be feared. They can be tools for growth, provided children still receive the grounding experiences of real books, real people, and real play. Shifts our perspective outward, reminding us that not every family or community experiences screens in the same way. For many parents, the conversation around screen time is about too much, how to cut back, how to set limits. But for others, the challenge is the opposite: not enough access to the very tools that could open doors for their children. This gap is what we call the digital divide. Imagine two children living in the same city. One has high-speed internet at home, her own laptop, and parents who are tech-savvy enough to help her troubleshoot homework assignments online. The other shares a single old smartphone with siblings, struggles with poor internet connection, and has parents who work long hours and aren't familiar with the latest apps. Both are expected to complete the same digital assignments for school. One glides through with ease, the other falls behind. This isn't just about screen time, it's about opportunity. Kamenetz highlights how unequal access to technology can deepen existing inequalities. When schools assume all kids have reliable devices at home, the ones without are left scrambling. Sometimes that means borrowing from neighbors, sometimes it means waiting in line at the library. For families already stretched thin, this adds more stress. Parents who want to support their child's education may feel frustrated and helpless when access simply isn't there. But the digital divide isn't only about devices and internet connections. It's also about what Kamenetz calls digital literacy, knowing how to use technology wisely. Even in households with plenty of gadgets, some kids are mainly consuming entertainment, while others are learning to create, problem solve, and communicate. Access without guidance can still leave children unprepared. For parents listening to this, the question becomes, what can we do in our own homes? Even if we can't solve national inequalities overnight, we can focus on teaching our children how to use the tools they do have effectively. If your child has a tablet, encourage them not just to watch videos but to try drawing apps, storytelling games, or coding programs. If your family has limited access, perhaps you can make the most of community resources like libraries or after-school programs. What matters most is not just the hours spent with screens, but how those hours are used. And here's where modeling comes in again. Parents who show curiosity about technology, who try new apps alongside their kids, who ask questions about what they're learning, give their children confidence to use tech as a tool, not just a toy. You don't need to know everything. Simply showing willingness to explore together is out that as much as screens can widen divides, they can also bridge them. Think of immigrant families who use video calls to stay connected with relatives far away. Or low-income students who gain access to free online courses and expand their learning beyond what their schools can provide. The same technology that creates gaps can also close them, depending on how it's used and shared. By the end of this chapter, the takeaway is clear: conversations about screen time can't ignore the larger social context. Some children need less, some need more, and many need better. As parents, the challenge is to recognize where our families stand in this landscape, and to do what we can to make sure screens are serving growth, connection, and opportunity. By now, parents have walked through the science, the real-life examples, the risks, and the opportunities. But here's the question most families are left asking. How do I take all of this and actually make it work in my home? This chapter is Kamenetz's answer, the idea of creating a family media plan. Not a rigid schedule that nobody follows, but a flexible, living agreement that reflects your family's values, routines, and realities. Think of it like a recipe. The ingredients are already in your home: devices, routines, personalities, values. What the plan does is help mix those ingredients into something nourishing, instead of leaving them to clash. A family media plan says, here's how we use screens, here's where we keep them, here's when they're okay, and here's what matters more. One family Kamenetz described sat down on a Sunday afternoon with a big piece of paper and markers. Together, parents and kids listed their favorite activities. Some involved screens, some didn't. The parents explained why certain rules mattered: no phones at bedtime, because sleep is important. No devices at the dinner table, because that's family time. But they also gave the kids input. Maybe they wanted to save Saturday mornings for cartoons, or maybe they felt homework was easier with a music playlist in the background. By making the plan together, the rules became less about control and more about shared values. This is a powerful shift. Instead of screen time being a battlefield, it becomes a family conversation. And because the children's voices are included, they're more likely to cooperate. A rule that's agreed upon feels different from a rule that's imposed. Parents often ask, what's the right way to set boundaries? Kamenetz suggests that the best boundaries are clear, consistent, and tied to reasons children can understand. "We don't take phones to bed" makes sense when it's framed as protecting rest. "We don't watch TV during homework" makes sense when it's framed as protecting focus. When rules are explained as part of caring for the child, not controlling them, they feel less like punishment and more like that. A family media plan doesn't have to be rigid. Life is messy, and the plan should allow flexibility. A sick day may mean extra cartoons. A long trip may mean movies in the car. That's okay, as long as the bigger picture holds steady. What matters is consistency over time, not perfection in every moment. One practical tip that many families find helpful is to designate both screen-free times and screen-free spaces. Times could be meals, bedtime, or the first hour after school. Spaces could be bedrooms or the dining table. By setting aside these protected moments, families create natural breathing room where connection and rest can flourish without the buzz of notifications. And here's something reassuring: the plan doesn't need to be elaborate. It can be as simple as 3 or 4 guiding rules written on the fridge. What matters isn't the length of the plan, but the spirit behind it, that screens are serving family life, not the other way around. Kamenetz encourages parents to revisit the plan regularly. As children grow, their needs change. What works for a 5-year-old won't work for a 15-year-old. By checking in as a family, maybe every few months, the plan stays alive and relevant. It also sends a powerful message: screen use isn't a one-time lecture, it's an ongoing conversation. At the heart of this chapter is hope. Parents don't have to feel helpless in the face of technology. By making intentional choices, by involving kids in the process, and by connecting rules to values, families can create a healthy digital culture that feels supportive, not restrictive. The family media plan is less about controlling screens and more about shaping a home where technology has its place, but never takes over. It's about balance, shared values, and creating the kind of family life you actually want. As the book closes, Anya Kamenetz circles back to the truth that has echoed through every chapter. Screens are not the enemy, and parents are not powerless. The real challenge of modern parenting isn't about eliminating technology, it's about finding balance in a world where screens are everywhere. And balance, she reminds us, is possible. For many parents, screen time feels like a daily battle. The whining, the tantrums, the endless, just 5 more minutes. The guilt when we hand over the tablet just to get dinner on the table. The worry that we're failing if we don't follow strict rules we've read online. But here's the most freeing takeaway from this book: you don't need to be perfect, and you don't need to panic. What you need is presence, intention, and what really matters isn't the exact number of minutes a child spends with a device. What matters is whether screens are crowding out the essentials: sleep, play, movement, and family time. If those foundations are strong, screens can have their place without taking over. If those foundations are weak, no strict rulebook will fix the problem. This is why the family media plan is so powerful. It gives you a roadmap to shape technology in a way that fits your family's values. It helps shift the focus from "how much is too much" to "what does a healthy balance look like for us?" And balance isn't static. It changes as your kids grow, as their needs shift, as your family's routines evolve. The key is staying engaged in the conversation. One of the most comforting lessons here is that you already have the biggest influence. Children learn how to use technology by watching us. When we model curiosity, when we put the phone down at dinner, when we laugh together at a family movie instead of watching alone, we're teaching them that screens are tools, not lifelines. They're part of life, but not the heart of it. So if you've been asking yourself, how much is too much? How do I stop fights over devices? How do I model good behavior when I struggle myself? This book gently answers: start small, stay consistent, and lead with values. Make sure your child is sleeping enough, playing enough, moving enough, and connecting enough. If those needs are met, screen time can simply be one more piece of the puzzle, not the whole picture. The overall message is this: technology is not going away, but neither is your power as a parent. You don't have to fear screens, and you don't have to surrender to them. You can shape how your family uses them, with clear rules, shared values, and above all, a spirit of connection. As you reflect on this, maybe picture your own home. Imagine screens not as a constant source of conflict, but as something your family navigates with calm, with clarity, and even with joy. Imagine less guilt, fewer battles, and more confidence that you are guiding your children well. That is the art of screen time, not perfection, but balance. And so, as we close this journey, remember, your child doesn't need a perfect parent, just a present one. Stay engaged. Stay curious. Protect what matters most: sleep, play, love, conversation, and let the screens fill in the spaces without taking over. That's how your family can not only survive the digital age but truly thrive in it. If this reflection has been valuable to you, I'd love to invite you to subscribe to this channel, where we explore more powerful parenting book summaries and insights to support you on this journey. And if you know another parent who struggles with screen time battles, maybe share this with them. Because no parent has to figure it out alone.